Star Trek, the 9 weirdest episodes in the franchise, ranked. With its hundreds of hours worth of episodes, not every Star Trek episode is up to its usual high standards. Some episodes are just plain weird. The first episode of Star Trek debuted on September 8, 1966. Since then, the successful franchise had 13 movies, but Star Trek has seen most of its success on the smaller screen. By 2022, Star Trek will have spawned 8 live-action series and 3 animated series. Watching every series of Star Trek would take over 600 hours, without including the movies. Star Trek remains a beloved series because so much quality can be found in its hundreds of hours. But like any large franchise, not every episode in Star Trek's history is up to the same standards. Some Star Trek episodes struggle with plot, while others have not aged well. Even the most devoted fan of Star Trek has to admit that some episodes are just weird. 9. DS9, Move Along Home is truly puzzling. For Deep Space Nine, one of the worst offenders is Move Along Home, the 10th episode in the first season. When the crew of the station try to make first contact with the Wadi, the aliens end up in the station's bar and they promptly realize that Quark has cheated them out of a fair win at a gambling table. In retaliation, the leader of the Wadi challenges Quark to play a complicated board game. In this game, the senior crew is placed in a deadly and confusing labyrinth. To escape the game safely, the crew have to solve a number of puzzles, like having to mimic the songs and hand motions of a little girl playing hopscotch. In the end, the crew agrees to blame Quark for the weirdness of the experience and not the aliens who imprisoned them. 8. DS9, Let He Who Is Without Sin tries to add to Worf's character, but subtracts instead. The Next Generation does a decent job explaining how rough Worf's childhood was, and DS9 goes into deeper detail. Unfortunately, when trying to emphasize the impact Worf's childhood had, Worf treats Jadzia horribly. Worf's actions are explained in Let He Who Is Without Sin, but the explanation is not enough to justify his over-the-top actions. Jadzia and Worf's trip to the vacation planet, Risa, is a time for them to discuss their relationship problems. Worf is so jealous that he works with a cult to design a device to attack the planet's weather grid to drive visitors away. The true weirdness of the episode is as Jadzia forgives him and there are no ramifications for a Starfleet officer attacking a planet's weather grid. 7. TNG, Genesis offers a baffling take on evolution. In Genesis, the TNG crew turn into prehistoric creatures who spit green venom. Genesis has completely inconsistent understanding of DNA. Spot the cat turns into a lizard, Worf into a prehistoric Klingon, and Troi into an amphibian. The technobabble explanation is that a synthetic T-cell is rewriting the crew's DNA. But Riker, Barclay, and Picard are the same species, so it should affect them in more similar fashion. Instead, the episode gives us completely different primates and a giant spider. Everyone is cured thanks to a crew member's amniotic fluid. Genesis weirdness occurs as mutated Picard leads Worf on a chase through the corridors of the Enterprise while spraying Troy's scent to entice Worf into following him. 6. TOS, And the Children Shall Lead, a bizarre story about possession and murder. Although the original series certainly has some classic episodes and well-crafted science fiction plots, the third season isn't its strongest. In And the Children Shall Lead, the crew lands on a planet to discover all of the adults have been murdered, and the surviving children seem unbothered. The children summon a glowing being named Gorgon, who gives them special powers, including mind control, and Spock discovers that the children are actually possessed by Gorgon. To break the hold Gorgon has, the crew plays back images taken from the colony of the children being happy with their parents, which are immediately followed by images of the parents being dead. In the end, Gorgon is defeated and the children are ushered off into much-needed therapy. 5. Enterprise. These are the voyages to the holodeck. The final episodes of TNG and DS9 are widely loved by long-term fans. Star Trek, Voyager sent the crew home, giving a glimpse of how they might live their lives once they return to Earth. For Enterprise, these are the voyages brought very little of the satisfaction audience members expected. Little time that is spent on the Enterprise crew, revealing that the characters haven't developed. Trip and Paul's relationship stalled. One of the most gifted engineers in Starfleet can think of no better plan other than to blow himself up, and barely any of this crew mourns his death. It is a truly weird way to end the show. 4. TNG, Rascals demonstrates regression in age and plot. Transporter accidents are a fond tradition for Star Trek. In Rascals, Picard, Riker, Keiko and Guinan get turned into children after a transporter mishap. Their bodies regress in age and they still have their adult memories. Unfortunately, Rascals cannot decide if this means they should act like children or adults. Keiko, in the body of a 12-year-old, wants to resume her intimacy with her husband, Miles, who is horrified at the idea. Picard relieves himself of duty because Dr. Crusher warns him the accident could start to affect his mental abilities. These two serious plots are contrasted as Guinan and Ro go jump on beds to reclaim Ro's lost childhood. The haphazard approach to seriousness levels ruins any attempt at coherency, which makes Rascals odd at best. 3. TNG, Sub Rosa goes where Dr. Crusher's grandmother has gone before. Sub Rosa shows Dr. Crusher going through her late grandmother's things, and notes that her 100-year-old grandmother had been having an affair with a 34-year-old man. Sub Rosa reveals that the lover of Dr. Crusher's grandmother was a ghost. He tells Dr. Crusher he loved her grandmother, and now he loves her. Dr. Crusher allows her curiosity to get the better of her, and she tells Picard she wants to quit Starfleet and live on the planet to be close to her ghost lover. In the end, it is revealed that Dr. Crusher and her grandmother did not have a ghost lover, but rather an alien who needed the two women to light a special candle so that he could continue to exist, which is why he compelled them to fall in love with him. 2. TOS, Spock's brain demonstrates no sign of intelligent life. In Spock's brain, an alien woman beams aboard the Enterprise and examines the entire crew's brains. She decides Spock's brain is the most valuable and takes it to her civilization, where it is known as the Controller. The Controller tells the Imorg living underground everything they need to know, so that they remain childlike, yet more advanced than the brutal above-ground Morg. With only 24 hours to find Spock's brain, Kirk and McCoy take a remote-controlled brainless Spock with them to a war-torn planet to look for it. The Imorg also have a giant helmet known as the Teacher that transfers all of the knowledge of their civilization into the mind of anyone who wears it. McCoy wears the helmet and gains the knowledge of how to put Spock's brain back into his body. Spock lives and the Brain Nappers are offered the Federation's help in ending their war. 1. VOY, Threshold mutates any coherent plot. Stuck deep in the Delta Quadrant, the crew of Voyager are desperate to get home. In Threshold, Paris comes back to the ship, falls ill and dies. No worries, though, because he quickly comes back to life and mutates into a lizard. He is a violent lizard, kidnapping Captain Janeway, stealing the shuttle, and running off on a Warp 10 adventure. The captain also mutates into a lizard, and when the crew finds them again, they have successfully reproduced healthy lizard babies. Fortunately, the Doctor is able to reverse the mutation on Janeway and Paris. Paris certainly achieved his desire to go down in the history books, as this episode remains the weirdest in Trek's history.